Hello, my name's Mel and this is an online tutorial for Unit Standard 27563. So this is Describe Teams and Team Leadership. This is worth 4 credits at level 3. So just a few reminders before you do this portion of Gateway Workbook 1. And this is the front page of what the Gateway Workbook would look like. A few conditions that you need to be aware of for the assessment is that you need to use blue or black pen, that you aren't to use any twink or whiteout. If you do need additional paper, you can actually attach that to the workbook, and also make sure you always go back to page 3's instructions to you as the student. You need to check your work and you need to make sure that all items requiring signing are signed and dated as well by your work supervisor or someone in your placement. Once you've done that, then you give it back to your Gateway coordinator. Please check out the other online tutorials in regards to what happens now after completing your workbook if you need more information. This is actually about describing teams and team leadership. It doesn't matter whether the company you're working in is a small team or a large team, because regardless of just being a team of just one person who runs a business, they do rely on other people in order to do their business. And an example for that is a plumber may need someone to purchase their goods from and their plumbing goods, which is called a merchant. So they become part of their team. They rely on other people in order to do the operation of their work. So when we are asking you questions about the team and also the management styles and anything along those lines, you can reflect on the whole business, and you can reflect also on the teams in regards to maybe the suppliers or anything as well. So think outside of that company that you're working in. So the first question is asking you about the importance of teams. So on the first question, task 1, it's saying describe what a team is. Just previously to that page, it describes what a team is. It references what is a team. So you place that answer in task 1. Please, as a reminder, make sure you're reading each task explanation, because it shows you what page number to actually find that information to answer the question. And also a reminder that at the beginning of each section of the workbook, it does give you an idea whether you need to do that in work or if you need to do that at home or in your Gateway class. Task 2, there's a big explanation here because it does actually reference your team or colleagues or other people you're working in, and an idea of how to think of a team. The second one is now you need to describe 2 different teams in the company you work with. It could be the accounting team, it could be the loaders that load bags if you're working within an airline, it could be the marketing team, it could be the sales team, or even finance team. There's a lot of different areas of a business, so each area is a different team. So you name the team where it says name of team, and you give the reason of having them. Now you can either work out what that reason is from your work placement, or you can ask the question of the people in the team. Anyone in that team, I'm sure, would be more than happy to describe to you what they do within the team. So the reason and the purpose of their job in the company. Again, make sure that the workplace supervisor or your support for that placement does sign this and date the actual date that it was signed as well. The next section, which is task 3, is about team development. So it's about building people together as a team. There's all different ways of doing that, and lots of different companies choose different ways of getting their team together. It could be a social way of getting together. It could be maybe learning something new, team development. So it could be along the lines of personal development, which means they get put on a course or they get further training. So there are different stages of each team. So I do want you to read, please, very carefully the information I've given you about forming, storming, norming, and performing, and the last one, mourning. Forming is when you actually come together as a team, first off. In italic, where it says example, it does say here that this could be when you first started. So please make sure when you're answering task 3 that you are reading those little examples that I'm giving you, because I'm trying to get you to think about how you've been forming as a team, starting in your work placement. You can reference that in your answer for task 3. Storming is obviously when your job role starts developing, or even you on your placement where you start developing in the role and they see certain areas that you're good at and might give you other opportunities to work and do different things. Norming is obviously when you actually are starting to socialize and work together. This could be maybe after a few days of doing work placement, or it could be asking another team member about when they started and how that happened. Performing is then obviously when you're actually functioning well on your own. It could be where your supervisor has maybe left you on your own to do a task. Mourning is then when maybe you're leaving your work placement. It can be quite a sad thing. So it might happen when, for example, you have to say goodbye to the people that you formed a relationship or team with. So please make sure you read the examples that I've given you, because it will help you answer the next task, task 3, very easily. So you do need to make sure that you talk about the 2 teams that you had previously mentioned. And you need to only use 3 different stages of team development. Any of the 3 options that it's giving you: forming, norming, storming, performing, and mourning. Any of those 3 across the 2 teams. So you could maybe use 2 of them in the first team and 1 in the next. You don't have to do 3 areas for each. Again, supervisor's signature is required after doing this task 3. The next task in the assessment is going to then discuss team building. This is what I was talking about in regards to you might be socializing together, you might do some sort of extra courses within a workplace. This will be somewhere where you'd need to ask questions from other employees in the placement and ask them, what do you guys do to get together as a team? What do you do to build your knowledge in the company? Do they do anything for you? Do they do on-site training? So ask these questions of the team. I know that it might be a busy environment, but I'm sure that if you ask the question, they'll be able to see that you're determined to get this done, and it will be a good look for you in the company as well. Team building processes, there's plenty of options that are given to you on the previous page, which is the usual structure of this book: information first, then the task. So task 4, you just need to describe for your 2 teams what they do for a team building process. Then you do need to get that signed again. So each section will need signatures. Task 5, you need to then talk about what a positive and negative success factor in your business is. It might seem daunting to you now because you don't understand what they are, but please make sure that you read the information before the task, because I give you examples that you can use. Then you put those answers in task 5. So you do need to also reflect on the 2 teams if you would like, but in this task you can also reflect on your own teams that you're involved with outside of your work placement. As it states in task explanation for task 5, you can use church, sports teams, teams in school, any team that you're a part of, your family, you're a team. You can reflect on that and talk about positive or negative success factors within those teams. So in task 5, that's the task that you do not have to reflect on your work placement for that. The next part is all about team leadership, the last section of this assessment. Again, very easily describing what team leadership is, and then you just need to answer task 6, what is team leadership? You can place that information into this task. Please make sure you do get that signed, as it is an area that needs a signature and the date. If you don't get those particular areas signed and dated when asked, you will have to do that to be competent in the assessment, even if you answered all questions correct. Team leadership styles. So there's different types of ways to lead a team. There's not just one type of leader. So they can demonstrate or act like a different leader to try and manage their team. So there are 6 different types here. Persuasive. Persuasive is where a manager might have an overall control over the situation and persuade the whole team to go in that direction. There's examples here of how positive and negative, so how good or bad that can actually be on a team. Autocratic is where the manager makes decisions regarding the team members. So they make decisions on their behalf. So they're quite confident, obviously, in that way. And again, it mentions anything positive or negative about that type of leadership. Consultative, that is where they actually are in the best interest of the employees. They'll ask you questions or other employees questions to make a decision for the company. Then there's also positive and negatives about that as well. Furthermore, there's consensus. That management style is a group process, so it can take a little while. So that is where we make decisions as a group rather than the manager just making them again. And then there's again the positive and negatives of that. Laissez-faire, that is a management that actually is where the company manager takes the back seat and actually guides the employees, but they manage everyone. So the manager doesn't necessarily give instructions, they let the employees decide. Again, in a big operation like an airline, sometimes the manager can't be everywhere at once, so there'll be a fair bit of self-management needing to happen where the employee is responsible for their own responsibilities. Positive and negatives for that is also outlined. The last one is management by walking around. This is where a manager might necessarily walk around the floor like in a bank or anything like that, where they may be in a hairdressing salon or a beauty salon or a retail store. They'll just walk around and manage that way rather than sitting down one-on-one with someone. Positive and negatives are then outlined there as well. So in task 7, you'll need to describe how there is positive and negatives and what types of leadership styles your 2 teams that you mentioned in the first task actually have. So team 1, write what the team is again. So is it the finance team, the marketing team, whatever teams that you answered in the first task, you need to use those please in this task 7. You need to actually describe 4 different leadership styles. Okay, so you need to choose 4 different leadership styles that those 2 teams actually are using, and you need to only do 4 in total. So you could do only 2 different leadership styles in the first team and 2 in the second team. As long as you describe 4 different ones across the 2 teams, that's a competent and correct answer. You just need to actually demonstrate, or not demonstrate, but you need to describe the positives and negatives about them doing that as well in the answer. So just be sure that you're reading those tasks very carefully. The last part is about people's behaviour. How do they behave? If you Google behaviours and types of behaviour, you'll find that there's different types of people's behaviour. It might be a direct behaviour where they are very direct with you and straight up with you and they don't have any emotion in there and it's just a strict instruction. So that's the type of behaviour of a person. There is an information page of leadership behaviours and scenarios. So there is actually a scenario giving you an example of how to answer the next task. There's 2 different ones, so it's working experience, maybe loading bags, work experience in any company in general. So I will describe in here as an example of how I'd like the answer, and then in your task 8, which is the final task in your assessment, you'll need to describe 4 different leadership styles again, but then you need to talk about what type of behaviour or how does that person act with using that particular style. So when I'm talking about a person's behaviour, I'm talking about, are they aggressive, which means are they quite forceful and not really taking any consideration of emotion in it? Are they very direct with the way they speak? They're straight to the point because maybe they don't have a lot of time to do that. So you're now talking about the behaviour style of that person when they're that type of manager. And you need to put the management style here. So is it persuasive? Is it management by walking around? One of those goes in there, and then the behaviour information goes here. As you can see, there's leadership style 2, 3, and 4. So you do need to discuss 4 leadership styles. You can use the 4 styles that you already discussed in the previous task, in task 7, please make sure you are now talking about the behaviour of the person. So then you need to get it signed. That's the last signature required for that competent assessment. Once you've completed that, please check your work. Make sure that you've answered all questions. Any assessment that's been sent in to me for marking will need to be fully tried and attempted. Any questions that are unanswered and sent in for marking will still be sent back again as a resit. And don't panic, you do get 3 resit attempts for this. It doesn't cost any extra for the resit attempts. It is simply just giving you another 2 weeks to complete another question if you haven't quite answered it correctly. If you do have anything that needs resitting, don't worry, I will make notes on there what to do, as in what pages you need to look at if you need to. Good luck with that one, and don't forget, go back to page 3 and check your instructions of what's expected from you.